Okay, so you want to own a Formula One team. Buy a factory, hire the best engineers money can buy, watch the prize money pour in. But here's the strange part. Formula One is the only sport where team valuations have nearly doubled in 3 years. Ferrari is worth $6.5 billion. And it's also the sport where McLaren, one of the most legendary names in racing history, nearly went bankrupt just a few years ago, hemorrhaging $137 million in a single year. Anyway, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how that's possible, how F1 teams actually make money on the math, and the one mistake that turns a multi-billion-dollar asset into a financial black hole. First, let's talk about what it actually costs just to show up. In 2026, General Motors decided they wanted in. Through their Cadillac brand, they paid a $450 million anti-dilution fee, just for the right to park a car on the grid. That money gets split equally among the 10 existing teams. $45 million each. For doing nothing. Just for letting someone new join the club. And that's before you've bought a single tire. If you want to skip the line and buy an existing team, Forbes values Ferrari at $6.5 billion. Mercedes at $5.88 billion. Even the cheapest team on the grid is now worth north of $1 billion. A decade ago, you could have bought a midfield F1 team for around $200 to $300 million. Today? Good luck. But let's say you're in. You've either paid the anti-dilution or bought a team. Now the real spending begins. Formula One operates under something called a budget cap. For 2026, that cap is $215 million. That's what you're allowed to spend on designing, building, and racing your car. Sounds like a lot, until you realize what the budget cap doesn't include. It doesn't include driver salaries. Max Verstappen makes $70 million a year at Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton makes $60 million at Ferrari. Those two alone would blow through a third of the cap. It doesn't include your top 3 executive salaries. It doesn't include marketing. It doesn't include engine development. It doesn't include the cost of building or upgrading your factory. When you add it all up, the top F1 teams actually spend closer to $350 to $400 million a year. So where does the money actually come from? Because you're not spending $400 million a year for fun. F1 generated $3.87 billion in revenue in 2025. That money comes from 3 main sources: race hosting fees that countries pay, broadcasting rights, and sponsorship. About 45% of that, roughly $1.25 billion, gets distributed to the teams as prize money. The constructors' champion takes home about 14% of the prize pool. That's around $175 million. The team that finishes dead last? They still walk away with about 6%, or roughly $75 million. But here's the thing. Prize money alone doesn't cover the bill for anyone. Not even the champions. The real engine is sponsorship. In 2024, F1 teams collectively pulled in $2.04 billion in sponsorship revenue. Oracle pays Red Bull over $100 million a year. Petronas has been on the side of the Mercedes car for over a decade. These aren't just logos, they're the lifeblood. And here's where it gets interesting. Before the budget cap was introduced in 2021, teams could spend whatever they wanted. Ferrari and Mercedes were dropping $400 to $500 million a year, and most teams were bleeding cash. The cap changed the math completely. Suddenly, if you could spend $215 million and pull in $250 to $300 million in combined prize money and sponsorship, you were profitable. Ferrari reported a record $223 million profit in 2025. Mercedes isn't far behind. The budget cap turned F1 from a billionaire's hobby into an actual business. But, and there's always a but, the margin is paper thin if you're not at the front. Think of it like this. The prize money ladder is steep. The difference between finishing first and finishing fifth can be $50 to $80 million. That's the difference between profit and breaking even. Between breaking even and a loss. Now layer in the uncapped costs. Driver salaries, as we said, aren't capped. Neither are engines. If you're a team like Williams or Haas, you're buying engines from Mercedes or Ferrari. That's another $15 to $20 million per year. If you're a factory team building your own engine, like Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull, you're spending hundreds of millions more outside the cap on R&D. Then there's logistics. Moving an F1 team around the world 24 times a year is a military operation. You're flying 60 to 80 people per race, shipping cars, spare parts, garage equipment across 5 continents. One estimate puts the annual logistics bill for a midfield team at $25 to $30 million. And here's the quiet killer, the factory arms race. The budget cap covers what you spend on the car. It doesn't cover the building where you build the car. McLaren recently opened a new wind tunnel and simulator facility that cost over $100 million. Aston Martin is building a state-of-the-art campus. These are multi-$100 million bets that you can build a better future, but they don't help you win next Sunday. So if the money is flowing and the valuations are soaring, how does anyone lose? Let me tell you about McLaren. McLaren is the second most successful team in Formula One history. 8 Constructors' Championships. 12 Drivers' titles. Names like Senna, Prost, and Hamilton drove for them. And in 2020, they nearly went under. The pandemic hit. Revenue collapsed. McLaren had been investing aggressively in infrastructure, new facilities, new technology, and suddenly the cash stopped. They had to sell their iconic headquarters in Woking, England, for £170 million and lease it back just to stay alive. They sold a stake in their racing team. Bahrain's sovereign wealth fund, Mumtalakat, had to inject emergency capital. At one point, Forbes reported McLaren had a $137 million operating loss. One of the greatest names in motorsport was fighting for survival. McLaren survived. They've since climbed back to the top, winning the Constructors' Championship in 2024 and 2025. But their story tells you everything about the trap F1 teams fall into. You have to spend to win. But you have to win to earn the money that justifies the spending. If the winning stops before the spending does, the math eats you alive. Williams is another example. They dominated the 1990s. 9 Constructors' Championships. And then they fell, hard. Years of underinvestment, losing sponsors, finishing at the back of the grid. For a long stretch, they were surviving on prize money from their legacy bonuses, a special payout the F1 system gives to historic teams just for existing. Without it, they might not be here. The lesson? Legacy doesn't pay the bills. Let me break down the actual math of an F1 team for you. These are rough numbers, but the principles are real. Take a mid-pack team. They finish 7th in the Constructors' Championship. They bring in about $90 million in prize money. Sponsorships might add another $80 to $100 million if they're well connected. Total revenue, somewhere around $180 to $200 million. Their spending hits the budget cap at $215 million. Add a driver lineup costing $10 to $15 million. Add engine supply at $15 million. Add logistics, travel, marketing, factory overhead, probably another $30 to $40 million. Total costs, $275 to $300 million. That team lost $75 to $100 million. In one season. Now flip it. A top 3 team. Prize money, $160 million. Sponsorship, $200 million or more, because sponsors pay a premium for podium finishes and TV exposure. Total revenue, $360 million plus. Same cost structure, but now they're $60 to $80 million in the black. This is the brutal economics of F1. The cap created profitability, but profitability still flows to the front of the grid. The budget cap doesn't make the sport equal, it just stops the top teams from spending infinity to stay there. But here's what the mainstream coverage almost always misses. The annual profit, the prize money, the sponsorship, that's not why billionaires are pouring money into F1. It's asset appreciation. A decade ago, an F1 team was worth a few $100 million. Today, The average team valuation is $3.4 billion, up 48% in just the last few years. The cheapest team on the grid is now worth more than most NBA franchises. Why? Because F1 is now a closed league. You can't just start a Formula One team anymore. There are only 10 slots on the grid, 11 now with Cadillac. Every time a new team wants in, they pay that $450 million anti-dilution fee. That fee alone proves the value. The existing teams are basically gatekeepers of a scarce asset. And scarcity plus global demand equals valuation. Liberty Media bought the entire Formula One group, not a team, the whole sport, for $4.4 billion in 2017. Today, Ferrari alone is worth more than that. Just one team. The entire grid combined is now worth over $30 billion. The owners who bought in early, the investment firms, the billionaires, the car manufacturers, they're not making their money on operating profit. They're making it on the exit. Buy for $200 million, sell for $2 billion a decade later. This is the real F1 economics. The racing pays the bills. The scarcity creates the fortune. So what's the one mistake that breaks the model? It's forgetting that the car has to be fast. Because everything, the prize money, the sponsorship premiums, the asset value, everything depends on performance. And performance is fleeting. One bad rule change. One missed engine regulation. One wrong bet on a driver. That's all it takes. McLaren nearly died not because the sport wasn't growing, but because their car wasn't fast enough for 3 years. Williams hasn't won a race since 2012. Every season you spend in the midfield is a season the financial math turns against you. The budget cap was supposed to close the gap. And it has somewhat. But the gap between first and last in prize money is still nearly $100 million per year. Over 5 years, that's $500 million of compounding disadvantage. The casino math works if you own the casino. The F1 math works if you're at the front of the grid. Formula One is the most expensive sport on earth to lose money in. It's a business where the product, a fast car, costs $215 million just to build and operate for 1 year, before you pay your drivers, before you market it, before you build the factory to make it. It's a business where finishing fifth instead of first can cost you $80 million. Where the most famous names in the sport have nearly gone bankrupt. Where an entry ticket alone costs $450 million. And yet, it's also the business where the smartest investors on the planet are pouring billions. Not because of the annual profit, but because they've figured out the second story. The real money in F1 isn't in the racing. It's in the scarcity. If you want the version of these stories the mainstream gets wrong, the real mechanics, the hidden forces, the second story, hit subscribe. We just dropped our breakdown of the FTX collapse, the smoking gun everyone missed. Go watch it right there on screen.